Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And my session is on Power Apps responsive design. Thank you to our sponsors, who have made this event possible. So big shout out to all of them. My name is Reza Dorrani. I am a Microsoft Business Applications MVP and a Microsoft certified trainer. I work as a principal consultant at my organization called Catapult Systems. I am also an avid YouTuber who video blogs frequently about the Power Platform. Now, the session today is on Power Apps responsive designing. And all of you all who've joined me today, I'm hoping have gone ahead and built apps using Power Apps. And specifically, I am talking about Canvas apps. So the focus of this session is going to be around why responsive apps. Why do we need responsive apps? How can we go about building these responsive apps? And what are some of the latest controls and templates that we can leverage to quickly add responsive designing to our apps? So let's begin with why responsive apps. Now, the definition for Power Apps is easily build mobile and web apps with a fully featured low code, no code development experience. At the same time, in Power Apps, we can build multiple types of apps. We can create Canvas apps. We can create model driven apps. We can also create portals. Now, Canvas apps specifically are the apps that we're going to focus on. These are not responsive by design. And many a times folks have the misconception that if I build an app using Power Apps, I can use it in the web and mobile device experience. Yes, you can use it, but the app is not responsive. If I build an app keeping the tablet experience in mind, and if I was to view that app on a mobile device, that app would just scale for me on the mobile device. It wouldn't truly be responsive. I will give you an example of a responsive web page also shortly. So it's important to note that Canvas apps are not responsive by design, whereas model-driven apps are responsive by design. And that's the reason why when you create a Canvas app, the first question that is put out to you as the app maker is, are you trying to create an app for the tablet experience or the mobile experience? So that question is the first question that you're asked purely because these apps are not responsive by design. And of course, your end users, they can access your app from various device types, phones, tablets, laptops with different screen sizes. And to ensure that all of these users get a great user experience, no matter which form factor or device they are leveraging, it is important for us to follow the responsive design principles when building Canvas apps. Okay, so we understood why we need responsive designing. Now let's look at a little bit of things that we need to consider before we even start building responsive apps, and that comes in the form of planning. So first thing is you need to plan for what form factors you are building your app for. Mobile, tablet, white screens, do you want to cover all of them? Do you want to just cover tablet and mobile? You need to make those decisions up front. Also, how should the app look in each form factor? So on a tablet device, I have a lot of real estate. Maybe I can position elements horizontally next to each other. Maybe on the mobile device, I need to position them vertically because I do not have that much real estate to play with. So you need to be aware of these facts and plan these out, specifically wireframe these out, your apps, before you get into responsive designing. Also, what controls or sections that you have created in your app need to stretch or need to resize? Do you need to hide certain controls or sections in certain form factors? Wherein there's a specific screen that only needs to work in tablet maybe. There could be a use case that you have on those lines. So all of these need to be planned out before you start designing responsive apps. So now that you've seen why do we need responsiveness? What are the things we need to consider before we start designing a responsive app? There is also a concept of how to prepare your app for the responsive design. So your app also needs to be ready to start responsive design aspects. So how do we do that? By default, a Canvas app has this feature turned off. And in order for you to turn this on, we have to go to the app settings, go to the screen size and orientation, and turn off a feature called disable scale to fit. And that's what the setting looks like. I will show this live in the form of a demo also shortly. But this setting has to be turned off because if you keep the scale to fit feature on, your app will only scale on different devices. It won't truly behave in a responsive manner. Now, once you prepare your app for responsiveness, you also need special controls. These are called container controls that are now provided to you that you can leverage so that you can add your standard controls in them and make them responsive. And for that, Microsoft has provided two controls. They are called the horizontal container and the vertical container controls. And these will only be available when you turn that feature on that I just showcased on the previous slide. Now, what's the magic behind these containers? Well, these containers themselves determine the position of the controls that you add within them. So you never have to set the common properties that you need to set in order to truly achieve responsive designing, which is the position of your control on the x-axis, y-axis, the width, the height. These are the four main properties. These containers can also distribute the space that you add, basically the controls that you add. It can distribute the space of those controls based on specific properties that you plug in into these containers. And not just responsive containers, Microsoft has also provided 3 responsive layouts, which basically use those containers. But these are layouts that are pre-built for you that you can leverage as screen templates. These layouts leverage a combination of those same horizontal and vertical containers that I showcased on the previous slide to provide a responsive screen designing experience. Important to note that these screen layout types are only available when you pick the app format as tablet. So if you pick the mobile app format, you won't get these screen templates. You would have to pick the tablet form factor. But if you're building a responsive app, you don't have to worry about the form factor. So just begin with tablet and start designing your responsive layout. So this was the backdrop of responsive design. The entire goal of the session, honestly, is to do a live demo. So I'm going to take a risk. I hope it pays off. And I'm going to try and see how this goes. Okay, if you have any questions as the demo is progressing through, feel free to put it in the chat window. I'll keep looking at the chat every 2 minutes or so. Okay. And as I say that, I'm looking at the chat and Josh is asking a question. How would you go about adding responsiveness to apps already built? Great question. I will also cover that. And is it worth it or does it make it more complicated? I will reserve that till the end of the session, wherein I give a synopsis around my view of what these responsive containers can do for you and are they truly worth it? Great question, Josh. Okay, back to my presentation. I'm going to head over to simply go over to Power Apps. Now, first thing, what is responsive design? I said I'll give you an example of a web page that is responsive design. Guess what? The Power Apps Maker portal itself is an example of responsive design. If I was to start reducing so let me go ahead and start shrinking the width of this. Notice how all the controls are automatically placing each other based on the real estate that is available in the screen. As I squeeze this in, notice everything just moves across depending upon the real estate that is provided. And if I go back to full screen, everything stacks up back again horizontally. This is an example of responsive design. Now in Power Apps, as I mentioned, you have 3 types of apps. Our focus is on Canvas apps. These are the ones that are not responsive by design. So I'm going to go ahead and create an app. I'm going to call this M365 app. And here I have 2 options, tablet and phone. I'm going to pick the tablet form factor purely because those screen templates are only available in tablet. You won't see them in the phone factor. Anyways, I'm going to be designing a responsive app, so I shouldn't care about it much. So I will go ahead and click create. Now, the moment I do this, the Canvas Studio is going to go ahead and create the app experience for me, basically taking me to the studio experience for creating my Power App. Once the app is ready, remember, the app by design is not responsive. That means this app right now that I'm creating, if I was to publish this and view this on a mobile device or even on my browser as my screen size changes, this app is not going to be responsive, and I can prove that. Let me go ahead and add a very simple label control to the screen. It's like a header control. I'm going to call this my responsive app. That's my header. Just going to apply some basic formatting here and try and position the text in the center. And let's say I give this size of 40. So I just built a very simple header for my screen. Now, this app is not responsive by design. And if I was to preview this app right here, if I was to change the size of my screen, notice the app is just scaling. You see this? The app just scales. And that's exactly what happens if I view it on different devices. Because I've built it with the tablet experience, it is just going to scale. And that's because this is the default behavior of Canvas apps. And remember, to turn on the responsive nature of your app, you have to do more. So first thing is, and this holds true even for your existing apps, Josh. So what you have to do is you have to go to File, head over to Settings, Screen Size and Orientation, and turn off Scale to Fit. When you turn this off, the aspect ratio property automatically turns off, and then you have an additional option whether you want to lock the orientation of your app or not. In my case, I'm going to keep it simple and lock it, and I will click Apply. And just like that, I have enabled responsiveness on my app. Now, this doesn't mean this app is responsive. The app is ready for me to build the responsive controls in it. And let me prove that. If I play this app right now, notice what happens right here, the header label. It's cutting off from the edge. Why? Because when I added this label, the label has a fixed width. It's not acting responsively, right? Additionally, if you look at the preview now, I get this new option wherein window sizing. That means this is showing me a true preview representation of my app as the users are going to look at this with different device sizes. So if I was to shrink the width, check out what's going to happen. It's shrinking the width, right? If I shrink the width completely in, notice that the label just vanished away on the right hand side. The reason is because the app is ready, but that label control that I added doesn't have the formulas required for it to act responsively. Now, before I go to the responsive containers and show you what's new and what can simplify this, let's see how you could still build a responsive app without even using those containers. So it's not like it's not possible. It's still possible. How? You got to play with 4 key properties. 4. Okay. Property number 1 is the x-axis. That means on the x coordinate, where is this label sitting? Right now it's sitting on position 0. Let's say I put this at 10, right? And it will just move 10 pixels ahead. For some reason, it doesn't like 10. Anyways, I've put it back to 0. Y is the y-axis. It's also set to 0. That means it is sitting right at the top, which is perfect. Then there's a property called height. And that is okay. I'm okay with, let's say, 80 pixels, no matter which screen the user is viewing this on. I have a problem with the width right now. And the reason is because if you look at the width property, it is set to 1366. And where has this magic number come from? It's come from the original dimensions that I chose to build the app, which was tablet. Tablet is 1366. So when I added the control and resized it, it took the whole width, which is 1366. But the app is designed with responsiveness in mind. I have turned off scale to fit. So how do I change the width depending upon the real estate that is available on the screen? And for that, you don't have to learn formulas. Let's look at what the screen property itself does. The screen, if I was to add a background color to this, just to prove something, let's say I put this light blue color right now. If I play the app, notice as I reduce the width of the screen, the background color is being applied everywhere, right? You see that? Even if I change the height, you see, the light blue color is always there. It's truly responsive, right? Why? Why is that responsive? Well, let's look at the properties of the screen. Let's look at the width property of the screen. If you look at the width property of the screen, there's a formula plugged in here. Okay, and this is by default. When you add a screen, this formula just comes in by design because it's built for responsiveness. it says it uses a function called max. That means get me the max value of two things. What? App.width. App.width is the width of my current app. So that is 1366, right? That's because I'm viewing it right now. It's 1366. And let me just put a couple of labels out here on the screen to prove my point. So I'm going to add a couple of label controls and I will put that value right here called app.width. Okay, which will be 1366 right now. And there's another one called app.minimum screen width. That's what is the minimum width for which I've designed this app. So let me place this. Let me place this. And now let me play the app. Now let me start changing this. Notice the app.width property. Check this one out. It's going to change based on the actual width of my screen. That means this is giving me the live width of my screen. And this is showing me the minimum width for which this app is designed. That means don't go below that width. And that's why it stops at 320. You see, I can't go further. I can't decrease the width further. That's because that is the formula that's been plugged here, which says get me the max value of either the min width or the current width of the screen. And how do I change the app.width? Well, that is your live width. It's already changing. But what about the minimum screen width, right? Where is this coming from? Well, if you go to the app object and go to advanced, you have these new properties now called min screen width and min screen height. So you can define what are the minimum dimensions for which you're designing this app. And the best part is it's 320 by 320, so it works perfect on mobile, even though I'm using the tablet version. So we don't have to change that. I'm not going to touch that. But it's important to understand that. Now, if I head back to my screen, and let me remove these two labels so we are not confused. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this one and this one. Back to my header label. If I'm playing the app, the header label is not responsive. How do I make it responsive? Very simple. Change the width to parent.width. What is parent? The label is sitting in a screen, right? What's the screen? The screen is the parent of the label. So take the width of the screen. Now, if I play the app, notice if I decrease the width, that label is responsive. You see that? It's responding. The width is changing depending upon the real estate that is available on the screen. And the minimum width is what? 320. So it stops right there. So it is not like it was not possible to build responsive apps before. It was possible. But what I had to do is for each and every control that I add to the app, I have to play with these four formulas: x-axis, y-axis, width, and height. And I have to write a lot of formulas to get all of this to work. And Josh mentioned, is it worth it? No, it was not worth it to build a responsive Canvas app, because if it took me X hours to build an app, it would probably take me 3X hours to build a responsive app. And that kind of breaks the essence of Power Apps as a low code, no code dev experience provided to you, wherein you can quickly build apps, right? So fair enough. Okay, so back to my screen. Let me go ahead and remove this blue color because for some reason it's disturbing me. Okay, back to my app. This is a very simple label. Fair enough. So what's new? What has Microsoft provided to us that automatically calculates all of this for me? I don't want to go ahead and plug in X and Y and width and height. I'm not interested in all that. Make it easy for me. Okay, so for that, once I've turned on responsiveness in my app by going to the settings, if I go to the insert tab, now if you search for something called as container, you will get two new options called horizontal and vertical. These are the responsive container controls. Okay, so I'm going to pick one of them, the responsive container. Okay, so here's a container control that is added to my screen right here. Okay, of course, this is like a normal control. I can drag, I can move it across. Now in this container control, I can add my other controls, my buttons, labels, whatever you're trying to add for your app. In this case, I will go to icons and add a very simple icon. I'll add the rectangle shape. And I will add 4 of these very, very quickly by just copy pasting. And just for fun, I'm going to put different colors so we can relate to these rectangles. I'm going to make this red. I'm going to make this green. And I'm going to make this one, let's say, orange, so we can identify these 4 different controls. Okay, so here are 4 different controls that are sitting in a container control. Now let's focus on the properties of the container control. The first property on the right-hand side is direction, right? That means when I add controls in this container, how are they going to be stacked? Are they going to be stacked horizontally, which is the case right now, or are they going to be stacked vertically? That means they're going to stack up vertically. They are there. It's just that there's not enough height in this container, but you see it's right here. So here they are stacked Vertically, if I change this, they are stacked horizontally. And guess what? The difference between these two container controls that I just showed you is exactly this. It's only the direction. So I can add a horizontal container and just make it vertical by just changing this one property. It's exactly the same. It's the same control, it's just the direction. Okay, so that's number one. This defines the direction of controls going in this container. Okay, good. What else can I do? Justification. How do you want to stack these items horizontally? Right now, they are all at the start position, that is left position. I can place them in the center. I can place them in the right, or I can tell them to be equally spaced in the width that is available in the container. So if my container width increases, notice the spacing increases. It's always equal spacing between all those controls. If it decreases, there's not enough space. It's not going to create a space. Okay. Next thing is vertical alignment. How is it going to be aligned vertically? Right now it's at the start. I can put it in the middle. I can put it at the bottom, or I can ask it to take the full height that is available in that container. Okay, so I'm going to put it back at the start. I'm going to say I'm going to center position all of this for now. So that's how my controls are stacked. Another thing is gap. Do you want to keep a gap between the controls? So let's say I want to keep a gap of 5 pixels. You see that little gap got created between all of these controls. Next thing is overflow. What happens if the container itself doesn't have enough width or enough height? Well, add a scroll, right? Add the scroll. So here's my scroll bar, right? I can see the scroll bar right here, right? Or add a vertical scroll as well. If this is a vertical container, maybe I get that scroll bar there. Now, another thing in here, let's say I increase the width and the height, is wrap. So what does wrap do? Wrap actually wraps the controls if there is not enough real estate available. So for example, if I turn on wrap right now, there is enough width available to accommodate all these 4 rectangles. And all these 4 rectangles have a width. You see this? It's 150. I can change it. They all have a width. The container also has a width. But right now for the width available, it is able to accommodate these 4 controls. But what if the width shrinks? Previously, it was showing a scroll bar, but now it will start wrapping. And because this is a horizontal container, this will wrap vertically. If this was a vertical container, the controls would wrap horizontally. So think about this. I'm on a tablet device. My controls are sitting like this. I am on a mobile device or a device that doesn't have much real estate. Guess what? They all start stacking up horizontally. That's responsive design, right? All the controls are automatically changing their X and Y positions for me. Okay. These are the only properties that are available for me as part of the container. However, for every control that I add in a container, I also get some special properties. So here's the control called rectangle 1, which is my blue rectangle. Notice that it gets a few new properties. One is the alignment in the container. So I can either read the alignment from the parent or I can define its own alignment if I want to. So if I want to break the chain of alignment, I can do that. But the key property is right here, flexible width. Now, rather than this having a defined width, I can also make the width flexible. Okay. Now, the moment I turned this on, if anybody observed it, let me try it again. This is off. So the width is 150. If I turn this on, 2 things happen. One, the width property disappears. Because now it's not the width. The width is flexible. Flexible to what? Flexible to the width of the container. Check this out. The container width defines the width of that blue box. Okay. The container width defines the width of that blue box. Next thing, if I go back to that blue rectangle, right here, I can also define something known as fill portions. Now, right now, fill portions is 1 of 1 because only one control in this container has the flexible width turned on. Let's say I turn it on for this one as well. Now I have 2 controls in a container that have flexible width enabled. That's why the fill portion is 1 by 2. If my math is right, that's 50%. That means take 50% of the real estate. And when do these wrap? If I start decreasing this, right? Check this out. It just jumps at the bottom. That's because it's flexible width plus defined width. Flexible width for just these 2 controls. And you can also change the fill portion. Let's say I want to give the green rectangle 2/3 of the space. All I have to do is change this to 2. This becomes 2/3 and this shape automatically becomes 1/3, a little bit of maths. And check this out now, as the width increases, decreases, blue will take 1/3, green will take 2/3 of the space. So these are some of the things or some of the key properties of the container control and elements or controls that you add within the container control that you need to be aware of in order for truly building responsive apps. Now, if I go back to the container and let's say I remove this gap for now, I'm going to make it 0. I want to just center align them and right. I'm just going to center align these right now and so and so. Now, is this responsive? What happens if I go and play this app right now? Is this responsive? Let's see. No, it's not. Nothing happened, right? Then what's the fuss about responsive containers? It's not responsive. Well, it is responsive. It is the container that is responsive. The controls in the container are responsive. The container itself is not responsive. So for this container, you still have to write those same properties that I added for the label. That means for this, you have to do the groundwork. But the best part is you have to do it once. So let's say the x-axis, I'm going to set it at 0. So sit on the left. Y position, I'm going to make it 80 because the height of my label is 80. Perfect. The width of this container, I'm going to say parent.width, which is my screen. So take the full width of the screen. And the height of this container, I'm going to say parent.height minus 80. Why minus 80? Because 80 pixels is being taken by the label on the top.
Hey, Reza, I think we lost your screen.
Oops, you lost my screen. Weird. Let me try and reshare my screen again. Thanks for pointing that out.
Well, no one else is typing it, but I'm not seeing it. There we go. I see it again.
You see it now?
Yep.
Okay, great. So all I did right now is for the container control, I added those 4 main properties, X, Y, width, and height. So I still had to add those formulas. I still had to do work, but not for all these 4 controls, just for one control. And now if I play my app, observe what's going to happen now. As the width shrinks, once there is not enough real estate available based on the minimum widths defined, right, they're going to start wrapping. So you see that it wrapped to the bottom because there was not enough width to cover the controls. So does it help? Do these responsive containers help? Yes, of course they do. But if I'm using them in screens, I have to still define the responsiveness for those container controls at least. Okay, Reza, it still work. Can Microsoft make it more easy? Yes, they can. Yes, they can. And for that, they have now added these 3 new screen layout or screen templates that you can select. And they come in 3 forms. Split screen, wherein you get 2 equally divided sections. A sidebar screen, which is pretty nice for a left nav, header, and the main area. Or if you want like a header, footer, and a main section. So they've defined these 3 templates. For the purpose of today's demo, I'm going to pick this one. And this now adds that template. Now, honestly, it's just a template with containers. If you notice, it has containers within them. And what kind of containers? Those same horizontal and vertical containers. And also, if you observe something, you can nest containers. So I can have a container sitting within a container as well. So I can define these multiple containers in my own screen if I want to, or I can use the screen template. Now, the beauty of this screen template is that for the container controls, those properties like width, height that I set manually, they are already preset. Check this out. If I check the width of this, they've already coded that for us. That's a part of the template. That means anything I add in here would adhere to the responsive principles. So now in 5 minutes, I'm going to try my best to see what I can add. So I have a data source called, learning, I think. Let me see if that is the one. Registrations. Okay, I'm going to add this registrations data source right here. And once I add this to my app, on the left-hand side, let's say I want to insert a gallery in this bar. So I will go to gallery and pick the vertical gallery. Now notice the gallery went in and the gallery width is spanning beyond the section of the container. We'll fix that. I will connect to my data source, which is my list of registrants. Okay. Now notice the width of the gallery is not correct, right? And the easiest way to fix that is go to the container in which the gallery is sitting, which is the sidebar, and the horizontal alignment, change it to the full width. Remember, this is a vertical container, so I can set it to full width. Notice now the gallery is sitting exactly in that space. And all I had to do is just set the horizontal alignment on this container. And of course, if I change the gallery style, it will respect all those styles. Check this out. It'll still respect and it will be in that space. Next, I want to add a header right here. Very simple again, add a label. Give this label a name. I'm going to call this registrations. Okay. The label is not spanning the full width. Easy. Go to the header, span the full width. Okay. Let's go back to the label, right? I want to center for this label. I want to add some color. So let me add a center align this. Let me give some color property. Here's my label, and the label itself, all I have to do is turn flexible width. Just like that, it added it right there. If I play this app right now, this is responsive. Check this out. See what's happening? It's actually responsive. All I did is just set the properties. That's it. The whole app is responsive. Of course, if I shrink in, there's not enough real estate and this looks very bad. I'll show you how to fix this also. We need to wrap. I'll show you how to wrap. But for now, it's responsive. Next, right here in the main section, I will add a very simple form control. Okay, a standard form control. Connect this to my data source. And for this, I will go to edit fields. Let me remove this field and maybe I have the name. And let's just keep it simple. I'm just going to add the name column and I will make this a single column right now. And that's it. That's my form. And this is a new form. Simple. Just a simple form where the user has to put the name in. Now, same problem as before. The width of the form is not equal to the width of the container. What do I have to do? Just span the horizontal alignment. Now the width of the form and the container is the same. In this, I want a submit button. Okay, add the button. The button is also going full width. How do I change that? Go to the button and then ensure that you don't have that setting turned on predominantly for that button. Okay, so I can say, you know what, for this button, I want to break the rule of the container and I want to center align it. Fair enough. I'm going to call this my submit button. And on click of this, all I want to happen is that I wanted to submit the form again. These are Power Apps formulas, and then maybe reset the form to a new form. Nothing special about this. Now, if I play this app, I can add data. So let's say M365, submit. This goes to my data source. Check the gallery on the left. It added it. The form is back live. But if I shrink this width, you see what's happening? The form control is cutting off at the edge. And the reason is because in a form control, this is a special control, it comes with data cards. So all you have to do for the data card is go to the width property and change it to parent.width. That means adhere to the width of its parent. What's the parent of the card? The form. What is the form following? The form is following the section. So now if I play this, check this out. You see, it's responsive. But if someone views it on the mobile device, it's looking really, really bad. That's because it's not wrapping. So let's go and turn the wrap feature on. And where do I turn that on? On the main container in which everything is sitting. So I will go here and turn the wrap feature on. If I look at the sidebar, what's the minimum width? It's only 32. What's the minimum width of my app? Let's go to advanced and copy it from here. It's 320. So, okay, my app is designed for a min 320 width. I'm going to copy this. I will go to my sidebar container, go to properties, and I will set the minimum width to 320. I will go to my right side container and set its minimum width to 320. You see, there's a little bit of calculation. I'm going to play this. Let's see what happens now with wrap turned on and minimum width defined. As I start scrolling in, if everything goes good, check this out. On a mobile device, it's going to place the form at the bottom and it's going to put the library on the top. And as the real estate increases, and if there is enough real estate to fit this on the screen based on the minimum widths I've defined for both those sections, it will go and adjust itself. So that's how easy it is. Easy it was for me to build a responsive app that has a gallery, a form, a label, a button, and they're all kind of interconnected with each other. Bear in mind, this is a live demo that I did on the fly. Of course, you can add a lot of bells and whistles and make this app look tremendously well in Canvas apps and add all the responsive features. And to answer Josh's question, I have an existing app. What do I do? Well, you still have to do a lot of work, Josh. You have to turn on responsiveness. Maybe you have to move these to new screen layout templates, or maybe you have to write formulas and add containers. So there will be a decent amount of effort that would need to be undertaken in order for you to truly build a responsive app. So that was my demo, and this was live on the fly. I hope at least you guys got an idea of it is possible to build responsive apps, and you can actually build them pretty quickly now. So if it takes me X hours to build an app, does it take me 3X hours to build a responsive app today? No, but still I would say it does involve some calculation, some logic, as you saw, and a lot of trial and error, a lot of playing around until you get your exact responsive design in place. So these containers help, the layouts help, definitely help, but there is still work that you have to do. Now, before I head over to Q&A, there are some good learning materials to learn from. Microsoft's official blog, the docs.microsoft.com documentation on responsive apps, and on my channel, I actually did a full playlist on responsiveness. I have 2 videos wherein I build 2 completely different use cases, so go and check those out. I tried to show something different today because I didn't want to keep it common to what I've done before. And the URL to that playlist is bit.ly/responsive power apps, all lowercase, it's case sensitive. That's all you got to do to go to that playlist. It has 2 videos and there are more coming. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to present once again. And thank you for joining this session. These are the details to connect with me. And now I will open the floor for any questions. And I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the chat. That's because my Teams is kind of sneaked out in the corner. All right, any questions? All right, Rafe Khan says, demo was very helpful. Thank you. Fernando says, great. Thank you, Reza. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Any questions on responsive apps? Any questions on responsive designing? Do you want to see another example of a full responsive app? If I get a yes in the chat, I'll show you. Okay, yes, please. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm going to Teams. So everybody knows Dataverse for Teams, right? That was a really cool session by Krishna right before me on Dataverse for Teams. So here's Dataverse for Teams. Don't forget, you can build Canvas apps in Dataverse for Teams. That means you can build responsive apps in Teams as well, right? So here in Teams, I have a team called Playzone. Okay, don't go by the name. And in this, I have an app called Power Quiz. It's basically a quiz app that I built with one of my colleagues in Houston called, his name is Deepak Srivastava. So both of us actually went and built this app and we showcased it in the Houston user group and everybody liked it. And Josh, here's your use case. I wanted to put this in Dataverse for Teams. So I took that app and I put it in Dataverse for Teams. But guess what? The app was not responsive. It's a cool app. You can start the quiz. It's like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire style. So you pick questions and then you get a question, and I hope I'm giving the right answer. You give the answer and then it just moves you through this. And then as you give answers, if you're right, great. If you're wrong, you get certain points scored and you can retake the quiz. It's a fun quiz app. Okay, you can see leaderboard and there's a lot of things you can do with this. Now, okay, as a quiz app, basic power app that I built, it's a Canvas app. But guess what? What happens if my user accesses this on the mobile device? It's going to scale. It's not going to be responsive. So what did I do? Well, check this out. I made this responsive. So as the width of my screen shrinks, I'll try and remove the background so you don't get confused. Check this out. As the width shrinks, look, everything's responsive. You see that? You see the buttons? The buttons are automatically sizing themselves. You see this? You see that? How is that happening? It's the container controls. All I did is I went back into the app. I added these container controls, wrote formulas for X and Y, width and height just for the containers, and moved all my controls inside those containers. Check this out. If I start the quiz, it's going to still adhere to the width. Check this out. Width shrinks, it automatically adjusts itself. If I start a question, it will automatically position itself depending upon the real estate that is available. You see that on a mobile device, it's going to stack vertically. And how am I doing this? I'm using those same magical container controls. Now, trust me, it's a big win because nobody wants an app that works in one form factor. Nobody, trust me. Go to any customer, go to any client who does not want a responsive app. They may not want it on day one, but trust me, as time progresses, they would want a responsive app. Responsiveness is the name of the game. So start looking at these containers, start learning about these containers, and nothing better than going to these links. I will share these links in the chat as well. I know you will get access to the presentation later, but why not have it right now? So I'm just going to post the links in the chat. Go grab them, learn from them, try things out, and I'm sure you'll learn more things. Any other questions? And thank you for being such a sweet audience. I think my time's up, by the way. Eric? Mr. Eric? I think he's on mute. Hello? Okay.
I'm working on it. Okay. Often we can go into about 45 after, so really up to you and to everyone else. But
sure, I'm right here. If they have more questions, I'm right here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Get those questions into everybody. Yeah, I mean, if this is it, then yeah, we'll go ahead and let some questions come in. And otherwise, our next session is going to be at 1 o'clock, 20 minutes from now. Okay, let me get that one out. That one is make sure, Microsoft Lists and its usage with Team and the Power Platform by Shakir. Very cool. Yeah, there was a change in our schedule at 3 o'clock in this room. Chris Barber is going to have a session on Power Platform Application Lifecycle Management. That is going to be canceled if it hasn't already. I know that he had to fail today, but of course we'll say that again. No one's going to remember that in 2 hours. But very cool. No, that's a great session, and it's been nice to see what Microsoft has enabled there for responsive design. Because when Power Apps came out, it wasn't. You had to build it to the form factor. That was a real shame. So very cool to see what they're doing, and great presentation of showing it how to do that. Thank you, Eric. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present. And once again, thank you to the audience. Thanks for joining us, and stay tuned. There are a lot of other good sessions coming up.